Hi, English 12. My goal in this video is to walk you through some of the key details in Part 3, Chapter 6, and to show you the way that Orwell makes some connections between things that happen in this chapter and things that happen earlier in the book in order to show us how much Winston has changed. So one of the first connections has to do with where Winston is in this chapter and what he's doing. So he is in the Chestnut Tree Cafe. We get a couple details about setting. We get that it's the lonely hour of 15. There's music coming from the telescreen. And then we get information about what Winston is doing. So he's sitting at a table, drinking Victory Gin, waiting for news from the telescreen. He has the chessboard and chess problem in front of him. And in these details, we are getting some connections to Winston, a memory that Winston had in Part 1, Chapter 7. So he remembers seeing three men who were disgraced party members who had been arrested, imprisoned, and released. He remembers seeing them after their release in the Chestnut Tree Cafe. And some of the same details that Orwell used to establish setting and what Winston is doing are details that we saw in this memory as well. So, like Winston, there's no one sitting around them. They have gin in front of them. We see the exact same sentence. It was the lonely hour of 15. We see that there's tinny music from the telescreen. There is a chessboard in front of them. And then there is even a song that comes out of the telescreen that happens in Part 3, Chapter 6 as well. So clearly Orwell wants us to make some connections here. And let's talk about what those connections point to. So these people were significant for Winston earlier in the book because of a newspaper clipping that he found that proved to him that the confessions that they made were false. And so at that point, they were for him proof that the party was lying. But we see that Orwell has also been doing something else through these three characters that Winston remembers. Through them, he has been giving us a foreshadowing of what Winston is going to become, and we realize that he has become just like them. So through this, we get a sense that Winston's story is not unique. Throughout the whole book, he has felt like he is different from other people, and we now see that his fate is just like that of other people who have gone against the party. So another connection to something that happens earlier in the book happens in Winston's memory while he's sitting in the Chestnut Tree Cafe of an earlier interaction with Julia. So they met on this really gross winter day, which is very different from their first meeting on a beautiful spring day in the Golden Country. And whereas that meeting was full of anticipation and connection, there is no emotional connection in this meeting. There is no physical attraction or connection. Their communication is really half-hearted, and really what they do is admit that they betrayed each other, that they don't have the same feelings for each other anymore. And so through this, we really see the way that the Ministry of Love has done what they didn't think it could do. It has destroyed their relationship and their love for each other. So that's another connection that shows a change in Winston. Then we see that Winston has a memory of his childhood. So apparently looking at the chess pieces makes him remember a game that he was playing with his mother during his childhood. And what's interesting here is his response to the memory. So earlier in the book, when he had a memory of his childhood, he would have really tried to think about what it revealed to him about the time before the party's full control. And he would have meditated on that memory and tried to figure some things out. And here what happens is that he pushes it out of his mind and dismisses it as a false memory. So he has really accepted the party's view of his past. So another way that Winston has changed. Finally, we see a dramatic change in his response to the telescreen. Throughout this whole chapter, he is waiting excitedly to hear news about the war, and when it finally comes, there's a trumpet call. It's an announcement of victory. There is this big announcement from the voice on the telescreen. It says that it is going to bring the war within a measurable distance of its end, and Winston is super excited about this. Earlier in the book, in Part 1, Chapter 2, there was a similar announcement, a trumpet call, same language, that the victory that happened may well bring the war within measurable distance of its end. And earlier in the book, Winston responded to this with skepticism. He figured that this announcement of victory was meant to set the stage for some bad news that was coming, and sure enough, the chocolate ration was then reduced. However, in this final chapter, Winston greets this news with excitement and this feeling of gratitude and love for Big Brother. So we see how much, in the course of this book, Winston has changed.